This is HCR Hinckley Community Radio.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Eve, and tonight we're going to have a little bit of legends and ghost stories. Let's start with the Kids Grove Bogart. The story of the Kids Grove Bogart. It is said that many years ago, in the early years of canals, a young lady was travelling from Liverpool to meet her husband in London, who had recently taken up work there. He had sent a guinea to her, enabled to pay for her transport, and she was carrying all the goods she owned with her in trunks. After a long ride on a cart that was taking corn to the mill at Hardingswood, she stopped to take a rest at the Canal Tavern, a lockside pub in Kids Grove. She was trying to arrange her further passage south by road. With no offers, someone in the tavern suggested that she travel by canal barge, and although she was not very happy about the idea, she could find no other choice. The tavern landlord agreed to watch over her luggage while she went to the wharf, and there she met 3 boatmen who promised her they would give her transport to London on their canal barge. They wanted to go on that night, and she was reluctant. They convinced her that the passage through the tunnel was dark in day or night, so they may as well set off as soon as possible. She did not like that idea too much, but because she could find no one else, she accepted. She noticed then that they had all been drinking, and that may have been to do with the cargo they were carrying, which was wine and spirits. The boatman went back to the tavern with her to collect her luggage, and they took a pint of port and then set off with the lady due south via the Hare Castle Tunnel. At the mouth of the tunnel, one of the boatmen took the pony up the track to Boat Horse Road, and the other 2 set off into the tunnel with the lady. The barge emerged at the other side, carrying the boatman, but the lady never came out. In the hope that she had riches in her trunks, they had murdered her and hid her body in the underground culvert to Golden Hill Colliery, known as Gilbert's Hole. On the search for her, she was found some days later in the tunnel without her head. The boatmen were tried and executed for her murder, but it has been said over the years that the Kids Grove Bogart has been heard wailing in and around the tunnel and along the Boat Horse Road. This is the road that runs directly above the tunnel where the tow ponies used to walk when the barges were going through the tunnel. Accounts of people hearing the Bogart go back as far as 1816, when an account can be seen in the journal of Hugh Bourne, the noted Methodist preacher. He writes of an event when he was at Talk o' the Hill at night, and he was informed by locals that several people had been injured in the coal mine, and that the Bogart had been very much about. Hugh Bourne describes the Bogart as something generally invisible that makes strange groans and dreadful noises at times. He adds, it moves unseen with a kind of noise and stops at a certain house just before an accident happens in the family of that house. Mr. Norman Roach, a local historian, wrote about people who he had interviewed who said that they had experienced sightings of the Bogart, and his printed documents in the 1950s tell various accounts. The first was from a cousin of Mr. Kinnersley's, a Mrs. Napier, who was staying at Clough Hall at the time. She said that while she was in the rose gardens, she saw a woman walking on the rose beds, and she was at the intention of asking her why she was walking on the flowers. As the woman came nearer, Mrs. Napier said she experienced an overwhelming feeling of sadness and bowed her head. Then she turned to speak to the woman and saw her passing with her back towards her, going through the hedge. A second or 2 later, she realised that the woman was in clothes of an older generation and was also headless. In case it was thought that she was losing her mind, she decided not to tell Mr. Kinnersley, but she asked the head gardener nearby if he saw the woman. The reply she got astounded her. He said that several of the gardeners had seen the woman, and he had always put it down to having too much to drink. The men called it the Kids Grove Bogart. Mr. Roach also writes of a Mr. Brooks, who was with a companion passing near the top of Boathouse Road, when they saw a peculiar figure that appeared to be leaning on a gate. He said he thought it was a housewife at first, but when they got nearer, it seemed to rush past them and disappear. They went to the point of disappearance and could not find any way through. There was just a plain wall around a property in Ravenscliffe Road. Apart from the housewife jumping over the wall, which would have been a very odd thing to do, they could only say that it disappeared. Mr. Brooks was convinced that he had an encounter with the Kids Grove Bogart. That was from Paul Jepson, a story told by him to myself. Thank you.
Please email our studio if you want to request a song, or if you want local events advertised, or if you wish to become a voluntary podcast presenter. Email us at hinkleycommunityradio@gmail.com.
Stockport's Phantom Hitchhiker. The tale of a ghostly figure of a woman attempting to thumb a lift near Mercy Square on Wellington Road South has intrigued many paranormal experts. The story, which features in a book called Supernatural Stockport by Martin Hills, says that on one occasion a biker picked up the woman and gave her a lift home to Hazel Grove. But when he dropped her off, she simply vanished into thin air. The biker then knocked on the door, and a couple answered. They said their daughter had died in a crash on Wellington Road years earlier. According to hauntedisland.co.uk, in 1974, Brian Mohan was driving his cab on the A6 through Great Mall when an elderly woman suddenly appeared sitting on the back seat. She was expressionless, dressed in black with a white blouse and a black bow. The driver then pulled over and turned to ask the woman how she got in his cab, only to find she had disappeared. I hope you enjoyed the stories tonight. Thank you very much for listening. Take care. See you again soon for the next chapter of Ghost Stories and Legends. Good night.